Don Lemon is under fire after telling people to buy guns to arm themselves against ICE. And people on the right are outraged by it, but I'm not really, to be completely honest. This is predictable, obvious, and we're going to see more of it. I can say this over and over again. We are existentially divided, the left and the right. I call it, actually, I'm sorry, I should pause. Stephen Marsh calls it the multicultural democracy and the constitutional republic. And I think it was correct and intelligent. He is the man who wrote I think it's called The Next Civil War, the Second Civil War. I forgot the name of the book. But he's researched this, and he says he's aligned with the multicultural democracy. But he makes a good point. There are two distinct factions, two distinct nations that exist within the borders of our country. A nation is its people. You have the multicultural democracy of America and the constitutional republic of America. Now, on the right, people have forever been saying to get armed in the event of tyranny. I am not at all surprised Don Lemon, who represents the multicultural democracy, is telling his people to get armed against us. Now, yeah, so I guess I would say like outrage isn't the right emotion. Concern, it is disconcerting to see that we are escalating to this point. But I'm not angry that someone who views us as a threat is preparing for conflict. Right? Anger isn't the right emotion. If we were a unified nation under one people, and the disagreements got as such that a bunch of people started buying guns specifically to kill the other side, I'd be like, whoa, 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 whoa. The issue I have right now is, like, if you came to me and said France is buying a bunch of guns, I'd be like, okay. I'm not angry about it. I'm alarmed, perhaps. Here's the story from Newsweek. Don Lemon telling people to arm themselves against ICE sparks MAGA fury. Don Lemon has sparked fury within the MAGA movement, and it's ridiculous to say within the MAGA movement, to be honest, after suggesting people arm themselves in case of a visit by U.S. immigration enforcement agents. The journalist and former CNN anchor had suggested on the podcast The Left Hook with Wajahat Ali that, quote, black people, brown people of all stripes should legally get a gun in case their homes were visited. He also added he was not condoning or promoting violence. Newsweek reached out to ICE and Lemon to comment on the story outside of normal business hours. Why it matters. Since assuming office in January, Trump has made deporting undocumented immigrants a key priority. He campaigned on it. It was one of the, if not the principal issue. While some are in favor of increased scrutiny of people's legal status, some critics have raised concern about ICE agents' expanded authority to conduct raids, and immigrant rights groups, lawyers, and stakeholders have questioned the legality and ethics of their actions. Shut your mouths. It's legal. There have been no known instances of U.S. citizens being deported. There have been some errors, but there are errors in law enforcement all the time, and they should be rectified. But ICE is doing their job that was codified by Congress a long time ago. They say, meanwhile, Lemon hosted his own show on CNN. This we get. Speaking on Tuesday, Lemon said, quote, if you believe in the Second Amendment, if you believe in the Constitution, black people, brown people of all stripes, whether you're an Indian American or Mexican American or whoever you are, go out in your place where you live and get a gun legally. Get a license to carry legally. Because when you have people knocking on your door and taking you away without due process as a citizen, isn't that what the Second Amendment was written for? Let's pause real quick. No citizens have been deported and everyone's received due process. And I'm going to swear. No, I'll refrain from swearing. I won't do it. But I will say to all the conservatives, shut your mouths. And I'm saying this to the conservatives. Stop posting that illegal immigrants don't deserve due process. Stop. You are wrong. You are wrong. And you are damaging the work that we are trying to do. Due process literally means the function of government by which you are due before action is taken, and everyone gets it. Now, Donald Trump didn't get it, and that's an egregious violation. You can't convict somebody on felony accounts that require an underlying crime without proving an underlying crime. That means there's no due process. Trump was due a process that was to determine whether or not a crime was committed. After the fact, the additional falsification of business records would apply. Illegal immigrants have gotten all of their due process in every single instance. There has not been one case where an illegal immigrant was denied their due process. There have been only a couple where it was contested. So let me make this clear. In the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who had a pending, he had a withholding of removal, his deportation was contested, not violation of due process. That would have to be adjudicated after the fact. We've not made that determination. The argument was that Kilmar was here illegally, did have an order of removal, but a withholding because he couldn't go back to his home country, meaning he could have been deported to literally anywhere else. So one could argue there was potentially administrative error in sending him back to El Salvador. However, the administration contends the declaration under the Alien Enemies Act supersedes this. So it is a contested. So by all means, we have no confirmed violations of due process. We are pending adjudication on what may be one. However, Kilmar Abrego Garcia is apparently going to get deported to Uganda now because that's due process. He is going through it. In fact, they even brought him back. So if you still want to make the argument that his deportation in the first case was wrong, they brought him back. Due process never violated because we have not reached the conclusion. But you know what? Go and say whatever you want. I will concede. Fine, you're right. There have been a small group of errors, but for the most part, every single deportation was due process. That is, we have probable cause this individual is an illegal immigrant. We have determined this is a illegal status, and the process they are due is a civil reconciliation of, we're sending you home. It's not criminal penalty. You're not being put in prison. You're being sent home. That's a civil penalty. These conservatives keep tweeting, well, they don't deserve due process. Yes, they do. And they've gotten it. In every instance, save potential errors if you'd like to make the argument. So Don Lemon saying they're coming to your home and taking you away without due process as a citizen, so you should shoot them? But that's never happened. So what is actually happening is Don Lemon is basically saying the presumption is if they come to your house, they're doing something illegal and you should kill them or seriously injure them. This statement, now, first of all, what I would say is I don't care if anybody says legally acquire a gun. I don't care if anyone says in the event there is an illegal action taken against you in violation. It doesn't matter who's doing it, right? So the argument actually, let me show you this. Brian Krasenstein says, if an ICE agent breaks into your home without a warrant, do you have the right to shoot them? First, my response is it depends on the state. Different jurisdictions have different rules. If he's making the argument that ICE agents are lawfully entering your home, citing, I think it's called like the escape principle or what, I forgot what it's called. If someone is seeking to flee law enforcement and enter a house, police can enter the house. If police have reason to believe that there is a building occupied by violent criminals and there is a threat or risk, they can enter the house. In some circumstances, there are issues in which they can enter homes without warrants. However, we typically reject that because you never know. We don't like the idea of any law enforcement simply entering a home and then citing exigent circumstances. That being said, can an ICE agent enter a home without a warrant? Yes, citing, I think it's called exigent circumstances. They did it to me. Now, if his question is, an ICE agent without a warrant breaks into your house, breaks into? So the implication then is multifaceted. If there is a guy who is an ICE agent and he's off duty and he kicks my door in, yeah, I can defend myself in West Virginia. In Maryland, you can as well. Surprisingly, right? Not if he's just on your property. In West Virginia, in fact, if people trespass on your property, you can actually shoot them. It's kind of crazy. The police will tell you, don't just shoot random people because properties are big. And so they don't want, like you wander onto someone's property in an accident, you get shot. That's ridiculous. You're getting in trouble. However, if someone jumps a barrier onto an open field, of which most property is, and you give them a warning and they reject it, let me put it like this. In West Virginia, if the cops show up and find a corpse on the ground and on your property and you say, I warned him and he threatened me, they'll say, case closed. And that is worrying in that sometimes you might get lost on an open field property and someone could shoot you. Well, you know, So when he says this, I think the important distinction is anyone, regardless of their job, has no right to break into your home. But we know what is actually underlying this statement. The argument is that, citing exigent circumstances, federal law enforcement entering your home constitutes a criminal action against you for which you can shoot and kill them. And that's what Don Lemon is arguing as well. Call it whatever you want. I'm telling you, I think I know what time it is. ICE is not overtly and overwhelmingly violating people's rights. Illegal immigrants are getting their due process. There are sometimes errors. These things happen, and they get adjudicated. In fact, with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, he was brought back. Due process was not violated because the circumstance is currently undergoing adjudication. So when they argued he was deported without due process, Stephen Miller argued under the Alien Enemies Act, the deportation order that stands is now superseding the withholding of deportation to El Salvador. He also wasn't sent into El Salvador. He was sent to prison. He was also brought back, meaning he is currently pending adjudication. So, like, when you're arrested and charged with a crime and you're in jail, they're not violating your rights. You can say, but I have a right to life, liberty, and happiness and freedom of movement. Why are you putting me in jail without a crime being proven? Because it's pending. And during this process, there will be back and forth as to whether or not your rights were or were not violated. Now, Abrego Garcia is going to go far, far away. This is where we are in this country right now, my friends, with Don Lemon telling people to take up guns, take up arms against ICE because they are kicking your door in and kidnapping citizens. It's never happened. It's not happening. But the fear is being created by these psychopaths. I would argue this. If my door got kicked in by ICE, and like I know it's ICE, that's the argument he's making. ICE is coming for you. I am going to get on my knees and put my hands on my head, and I'm going to wait. Now, these leftists go, you bootlicker. I don't care. Your words mean nothing. I don't want to die. Now, if the door gets kicked in and there's plainclothes individuals, therein lies a very serious challenge that exists to this date and has for a long time. If some dudes kicked my door in and they're in plainclothes with no visible badges, simply yelling police don't cut it. Sorry, it doesn't. Announcing that we're officers, what do you think gangbangers and criminals are going to do? Gangbangers, open up. No, they're going to yell police because they want to kill you. So, in the instance, people kick your door in and storm into your house, just like we saw with, let me pull up the, it was Breonna Taylor. The boyfriend, his name was, I think it was Kevin something. Let me pull this up. What was Breonna Taylor's boyfriend? He got arrested at first because he shot a cop. Kenneth Walker. He was cleared of all wrongdoing. Why? He shot officers believing they were intruders. They returned fire, killing Taylor. He was charged, cleared, and he settled a lawsuit for $2 million. So yes, when plainclothes officers come into your house, in fact, depending on the jurisdiction, you likely will be charged, but assuming you survive, you're not going to be accused of wrongdoing. This is not what's happening. ICE are wearing clear uniforms. They say police. They have identifying information on their uniforms. In the event someone comes to your house and they're a police officer, even if they're violating your rights, you do not win by fighting with the cops. Now, don't get me wrong. Look, in the instance that you're dealing with a totalitarian dictatorship, and they're like, we're going to do whatever we want and black bag you, sure, fine. You're dealing with criminal actions against you. We're not seeing that. Exigent circumstances, they come into your house, and this could be someone's fleeing, they have reason to believe a violent crime is being committed, or there is a crime being committed, in which case, you're not going to win by fighting with these guys. You get on your knees, put your hands on your head, and you wait for things to calm down, lest it get hot. I'm not a fan. I do not like where we are as a country. I do not want federal law enforcement sweeping through buildings or doing any of these things. But it's a world created by Democrats by allowing illegal immigrants to flood the country for the past 4 years or longer to the tune of 10 or upwards of 20 million. So spare me the hypocrisy, Don Lemon. It's getting crazy. Smash the like button, share the show, stay tuned, more to come. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all in the next segment.